The two most effective tools for creating internal safety in the nervous system are self-compassion and mindfulness. I've talked about both of them a little bit, but we're going to dive deeper in today because without mastering these two tools, healing can be really hard. They're literally the foundations of being able to create safety, which, as you're learning, is what healing the nervous system boils down to. And my hope is that after this, every single one of you comes away from this understanding how insanely important both of these tools are. They're not something that you just show up in the program, do an exercise, got it, good. They're tools that I continue to try to improve. I'm constantly working on both of them, understanding that when it comes to having a healthy nervous system, they're at the top of the list. Okay, we've talked about how processing emotions is one of the most powerful ways to communicate safety to the brain, right? Moving toward emotions instead of avoiding them. That sends a powerful safety signal. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to suppress. I'm going to look straight at and move toward. And we know that that safety signal moves the body out of fight or flight. Here's the thing, though. Effective emotional processing, which a lot of you are up against right now. I could tell by the chat and stuff going on with your questions. To process emotions effectively, we have to have self-compassion on board. It's literally the prerequisite for being able to do this effectively. And there's so many of you here that are struggling with this because you've been doing the opposite for so long. You've been hard on yourself. You've been critical of yourself. A lot of you here asking questions, I'm sitting down. It doesn't feel like there's anything coming to the surface. Like, what am I supposed to be feeling? I'm not feeling much. Am I in freeze? I feel numb. So much of this stems from a lack of self-compassion. Self-compassion is what creates that safe environment where those emotions will start to come out of the depths, rising to the surface, because it finally feels safe to do that. How many of you have a friend that you've hung out with that's just super critical, super judgmental, and you just don't feel like opening up because it's not a safe place to do it? It is no different and even more important when it comes to ourselves and the environment that we create. We have to have that kindness and that self-compassion for stuff to come up and out. And if it doesn't come up and out and it stays suppressed, it's going to constantly trigger the fight or flight nervous system, keeping you stuck in a state of dysregulation. Mindfulness, on the other hand, the second tool, allows us to be able to feel those emotions when they surface without becoming overwhelmed by them. Okay, and when we master both of these tools together, it allows us to process so much more effectively, which, as I mentioned in here, when it comes to moving the body out of fight or flight, processing your emotions, top of the list. Nothing has improved my health more so than processing emotions. And I can tell you I've spent the last decade and a half researching, learning from the best in the world. And this practice of processing my emotions, nothing has improved my health more. But without self-compassion, without mindfulness, was not very good at it. Okay, before we get into self-compassion, I haven't gone into self-compassion this deeply. I haven't done what I'm about to do with the mindfulness and provide some more exercises and guided meditations. But after reading some of your questions and knowing, having ran this program multiple times, again, these two concepts, these two tools are the things that are missing in most of your healing journey. If you're stuck, this is where to look, because this unlocks your ability to effectively process your emotions, which again is one of the most effective ways to move your body out of fight or flight. Okay, so before we get into it, I want you to understand exactly what self-compassion is, because I think a lot of you may not even fully understand what it even is. So self-compassion is the practice of treating yourself with kindness, understanding, acceptance, These are big words, and we're just cruising over them, especially in times of difficulty or failure. It involves acknowledging your own suffering without judgment, responding with warmth and care, just like you would treat a good friend or a loved one. How many of you here respond to your suffering or any time of difficulty, something you've gone through, maybe when you've failed? How many of you respond with warmth and care, just like you would if a good friend that you were talking to was really struggling? They failed at something, they were having a hard time. One of the biggest threats to our nervous system and our sense of safety is shame. I say that again. One of the biggest threats to our nervous system and our sense of safety is shame. Okay, it's one of the lowest energy emotions we can experience and one of the most corrosive to our health. It keeps us trapped in a state of fear and self-judgment, which is exactly what sends constant danger signals to the brain, keeping it stuck in this state of perceived danger. As long as there's shame, there's this constant threat, which prevents healing. There are so many different forms of shame, and most of us have experienced most of them. How many of you here have compared yourself to someone else in the past? What about criticizing your body? How many here have criticized your body? Have you ever felt like you weren't smart enough, fit enough, skinny enough, successful enough, attractive enough? Maybe you felt like you weren't a good enough parent or spouse? How many of you have experienced any of those feelings? Shame is so destructive. It impacts our mental health, our emotional well-being, and undermines our relationships. It damages our self-esteem. But most importantly, it keeps the brain in a constant state of perceived danger. As long as there's those feelings, there's a threat. When we start to understand where shame comes from, this is when we can begin to dissolve it. Okay, shame almost always stems from the inner critic, that voice. It's actually a protective voice, believe it or not, but it's feeding you constant thoughts and beliefs like you're lazy, you're not this, you're not that, don't speak up, you're not smart enough, you're not attractive enough, you're not enough. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to shield you from a past experience of shame, right? Motivating you so that you will avoid it. Like if you just feel so bad about how overweight you are, maybe you'll lose some weight and then you won't experience the shame of being overweight again. That's the goal of the inner critic. But what happens is that these voices do the opposite and they leave us feeling worthless and like we're never enough. Again, keeping the brain in a constant state of perceived danger. There's so many different forms of shame. I just wanted you to just kind of take note of these areas in your life and where you might struggle the most, okay? I'll just read through a little list. Body shame. Feeling inadequate about your appearance, maybe your weight or any perceived flaws. Maybe there's features you don't like about yourself. Failure shame, feeling ashamed of perceived failures, maybe in your career, relationships, goals. Social shame, feeling embarrassed in social situations or like you don't belong or you're not enough. Guilt over past actions. A lot of parents, mom guilt, ruminating over the past, even when things are beyond your control. Comparison shame, feeling inferior when comparing yourself to others. Maybe it's their achievements or status or whatever it is. parenting shame, feeling inadequate or judged as a parent due to social expectations or perceived flaws. There's so many different sources of shame. But here's the truth. All feelings of shame stem from the deep desire to be loved, accepted, and feel like you're enough. We believe that we fall short of these expectations. We experience so much shame, which causes so much suffering. So to be able to heal, we have to address the underlying need for more love and acceptance. Okay, and this starts with learning how to give ourselves the same love and compassion that we so generously give the people around us. And the only way to do this is by mastering self-compassion. This is where self-compassion is so important. When we cultivate self-compassion, it allows us to recognize our worthiness, regardless of our perceived flaws and shortcomings. By treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, we can counteract that negative self-talk and judgment that causes so much shame in our life. Again, creating that constant threat in our life. Nothing sends a more powerful safety signal to the brain than practicing self-compassion. While shame, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. Powerful danger signal, constant threat, preventing us from healing. And the first step to being able to dissolve the shame is becoming fully aware of its presence. That's why I read through that list. I'm asking you, reflect. Where in your life are you feeling shame? Okay, to help you be able to do this a little bit better, I'm going to guide you through a really powerful meditation, one that I've used over the years. It's just going to help you bring awareness to those areas of your life so you can start to dissolve the shame, moving your body into safety. Okay. I'm going to take you through this guided experience. Go ahead and find a comfortable place to sit. Let's just take about 5 minutes. So we're going to start by closing our eyes and taking a couple deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I want you to take a minute to reflect on where you're currently feeling shame in your life, where you're feeling like you're not enough. It can be body shame, you're not skinny enough, fit enough, attractive enough. Maybe you have feelings like you failed at this program, you don't feel like you're disciplined enough or driven enough. You don't feel like you're getting enough done at work. Not a good enough parent, good enough spouse, good enough friend. Just take note the areas of your life where you're feeling like you're not good enough. And if you're having a hard time thinking of something, think about what your inner critic always tells you. What does that critical voice say? Once you've identified where you're feeling shame, just take a minute to observe the feelings of discomfort. And just let it all happen. Just observing without judgment, welcoming the feeling, allowing it, letting it come to the surface, and just remembering that feeling is healing. I want you to practice allowing yourself to fully experience the feeling of shame without any judgment. Just acknowledging that it's a natural and normal human experience. Everyone experiences shame. Just giving yourself permission to feel whatever arises without trying to push it away, speed up the process, judge it, make it wrong, suppress it. Just let it be there. With a gentle and curious attitude, I want you to investigate the thoughts and beliefs associated with those feelings of shame. Just take a minute to ask yourself, what thoughts or beliefs are contributing to this emotion? What am I believing about myself that has led me to feel this way? Just take a minute to reflect. Now we're going to go from the cognitive processing to more of the physiological processing, becoming aware of what's happening in your body as you feel this shame. How does it manifest in your body? Just notice where you feel the shame. What does it feel like? Just observing without trying to change. Now we're going to practice meeting the shame with loving presence and self-compassion. So in your mind, I want you to repeat these affirmations. It is okay to feel this way. I am not alone in the experience of shame. So many others have felt this way too. I am worthy of love and acceptance, regardless of any flaws or mistakes I believe I have. I am safe in this moment. There's nothing wrong with me. May I be kind to myself in this moment of suffering, embracing my suffering with care and compassion. And just focus on receiving the love you're offering yourself, knowing that so much healing happens when we allow ourselves to notice and acknowledge our own suffering and both give and receive our own love. This kindness toward yourself is exactly what will allow you to start to feel safe and loved, which is the foundation of meaningful and lasting change. We cannot heal if we do not feel safe. Take a big deep breath in. Exhale slowly, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Maybe you felt a significant shift, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you've been so hard on yourself for so long that offering yourself love and kindness just feels really bizarre and like there's nothing happening. I remember the first time I practiced this and it was like, I'm supposed to be feeling something. This just feels, it is a skill. It takes practice. And so many of us have been doing the opposite for so long. Literally the complete opposite of love and kindness. It takes time to be able to offer that love and care and to be able to actually feel it and receive it and feel safe as a result of it. So many of you here are really hard on yourselves. And a lot of you have used like your tough love and as your, sort of this edge and this way to motivate yourself, like being hard on yourself. If you just don't accept who you are, then you'll be driven to make changes so you don't have to feel that way anymore. But what's so interesting is that research actually shows the opposite is true. And we're kind to ourselves. That's where so much of our motivation comes from, right? Now we're shifting our motivation from fear to love. And that's what will take you the distance.